Africa is a magnificent continent with plenty of natural resources, raw materials, precious metals, and fertile soil. Despite its abundant natural resources, many African countries are among the poorest in the world, with a considerable proportion of its citizens living in poverty. Africa's economic growth varies greatly from country to country and region to region, with differences ranging from culture to trade, to historical development, international ties, and major resources. The gross domestic product, aka GDP, is the cumulative worth of all goods and services produced within a country during a particular time duration, usually a year. In this video, we shall be using this metric to determine the wealthiest countries in Africa. Using the data obtained from the International Monetary Fund, here are the top 10 richest countries in Africa by GDP in 2023. 10. Angola, GDP, $66 billion. Angola is home to one of the continent's largest deposit of raw materials. In essence, the country should have been higher on this ranking of Africa's wealthiest countries. However, the country's economy has suffered as a result of resource mismanagement and internal corruption. Angola's economy is based on oil, with natural gas and oil reserves accounting for more than a third of the country's GDP. Crude oil production and export contribute significantly to foreign exchange earnings, and crude oil sales account for 90% of the country's export revenue. Diamonds and cargo ships are two other notable exports of the country. 9. Ghana, GDP, $74 billion. Ghana's economy is broad and resource-rich, making it one of the wealthiest countries on the African continent. Due to its overall favorable business environment, the country has attracted international investment, and has grown at a rate of just over 6% during the last 2 years. Services accounts for almost half of Ghana's GDP and employ nearly a third of the country's workforce. With little under 25% of GDP, the service industry is the second largest contributor to GDP, followed by agriculture. Ghana has a rich natural resource base, which has aided the country's economic development. Gold is the country's main export, followed by petroleum, which accounts for half of the country's foreign exchange. Other notable exports include cocoa beans, lumber, and gold. 8. Tanzania, GDP, $76.5 billion. With a GDP of just over $75 billion, Tanzania places 8th on our list of the top 10 richest countries in Africa. Known as the home of some of the continent's most famous national parks, and of course, the infamous Mount Kilimanjaro, the country comprises of a lower middle-income economy. The country's economy is largely based on agriculture, contributing almost 25% to GDP, and employing half of the workforce. Industries are a growing component of the economy, which accounts for almost 30% of GDP and includes mining, manufacturing, construction, electricity, natural gas, and water supply. Tanzania has achieved a relatively high economic growth in recent years, with a 5.6% growth rate, but this seems to be slowing down. The medium-term economic outlook is positive, supported by large infrastructure spending, with real GDP projected to grow by 5.8% in 2023. 7. Ethiopia, GDP, $94 billion. Ethiopia is a country located in East Africa. The country's economy is driven by agriculture, construction, manufacturing, tourism, food processing, resources, and energy. Agriculture is the region's most potential resource, accounting for more than 40% of GDP, 60% of exports, and over 80% of total employment. Since 2008, Ethiopia's economy has grown at an annual rate of 9.9% on average. This consistent annual growth, which only a few African countries have achieved, has begun to draw global investment. In 2018, the administration embarked on a bold economic reform to further open up the economy and drive transformation. By 2015, the country's poverty rate had dropped to 31%, and it aimed to become a middle-income economy by 2025. 6. Kenya, GDP, $106 billion. Kenya, an East African country famous for its wide landscapes and animals, is one of Africa's richest countries, with a GDP of over $100 billion. This country is the wealthiest in Southeast and Central Africa, thanks to stable living conditions, a thriving coffee and tea industry, and a fast-expanding agricultural sector. For centuries, its coastline has served as a key port for Asian and Arabian traders, transforming it into a regional trading powerhouse. Kenya's economy is not based on oil like many other African countries on this list, but it is nevertheless growing in a variety of ways. Kenya's GDP rose by 5.7% in 2021, making it one of sub-Saharan Africa's fastest-growing economies. 5. Morocco, GDP, $124 billion. With a GDP of over $120 billion, Morocco's economy is diverse and steady, with growth in a variety of areas during the last decade. Morocco is Africa's second richest non-oil producing nation, and the country's economy is mostly based on mining and industry. Key drivers of the Moroccan economy include industry at 30%, agriculture at 15%, and services at 55%. This is aided by the developing tourism industry, with inhabitants welcoming of visitors, and the government focusing heavily on attracting tourists to the country's well-known attractions. Morocco, which relies mostly on agriculture, is the world's third largest producer of phosphorus. The country has garnered substantial benefits from its diversified exports, which includes electrical equipment, automobiles, and car parts. Furthermore, the telecom and textile industries contribute significantly to the economy of the country. 4. Algeria, GDP, $151 billion. Algeria, a North African country, is the continent's largest country by landmass, and it's the fourth wealthiest country in Africa. With a large economy and infrastructure, as well as a GDP of over $150 billion, the country has made great progress in reducing poverty by 20% in the last 20 years. In this emerging Saharan country, crude oil reserves are plentiful, and the economy is strongly reliant on them. So much so, that oil and natural gas account for about 70% of the country's revenue. Agriculture, industrial activities, commercial services, and construction are some of the other industries that make up Algeria's economy. In addition, the country is one of Africa's top suppliers of ammonia. However, it's worth mentioning that the current slump in oil prices has resulted in a decrease in the country's currency reserves. Algeria's economic growth has also slowed due to political uncertainty and scandals in the oil business. 3. South Africa, GDP, $329 billion. With a highly developed economy, superb infrastructure, and a GDP of over $320 billion, the country is considered as one of the world's fastest developing. South Africa is one of the few countries on this list that does not rely on a single source of income. Mining, manufacturing, financial services, and tourism are all important industries in the country. Natural resources and raw materials like gold, diamonds, platinum, coal, and iron ore are also plentiful in this country. South Africa is well known around the world as a popular tourist destination, and it places a high value on tourism as a source of revenue. Political and global upheaval, however, have hampered the country's capacity to meet its full potential. After witnessing 4 quarters of negative GDP growth, the country was forced into recession, and growth has slowed to only 0.2% the previous year. Which means things are not looking good for the country. 2. Egypt, GDP, $394 billion. For many years, this ancient country from North Africa held the title of Africa's richest country. The economy, on the other hand, was seriously affected, and foreign exchange reserves plummeted as a result of the Arab uprising in 2011. Egypt is presently the second richest country on the African continent, with a recent GDP of over $390 billion. Over the last decade, economic activity has increased and stabilized, resulting in good economic growth. Petroleum and natural gas, tourism, wholesale, retail trade, construction, and real estate are all important aspects of the Egyptian economy. In recent years, the country's economy has shifted away from raw material exports, with service-based employment accounting for more than half of the GDP. The government and the IMF recently completed an economic reform package aimed at improving and strengthening the economy of the country. Nigeria, GDP, $514 billion. Nigeria, with its vibrant cultural heritage, diverse ethnicities, natural beauty, and large population, remains Africa's wealthiest country, and top producer in terms of GDP output. Finance, transportation, infrastructure, tourism, and an abundance of crude oil are all major contributors to the country's wealth. In addition to petroleum, which contributes to the region's prosperity, Nigeria has a variety of raw materials and natural resources. Some of these natural resources include coal, limestone, zinc, lead, tin, natural gas, niobium, and iron ore. There is also enough fertile land for agriculture, which accounts for approximately 20% of the country's GDP. Nigeria's enormous population has helped the country become Africa's largest consumer store, and its digitally savvy citizens have contributed to the country's rapidly rising IT sector. Nigeria's GDP increased at a pace of 7% per year between 2000 and 2014, making it one of Africa's fastest-growing economies. Due to political and social unrest, socio-economic issues, and oil and production shocks, this has dropped to a little over 2% in recent years. The government has also placed a major emphasis on protecting its natural resources, in an attempt to wean itself off its dependency on oil refineries and processing factories. So, there you have it, explorers. The top 10 richest countries in Africa by GDP per capita. Don't forget to press the like button if you enjoyed the video. And make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you don't miss out on any of our future uploads. Thanks for watching this one, catch you all in the next.